Okay, so next we're going to talk about our resources. So you heard from awareness, you heard from evaluation group, and then this is the third one, the third part of our little trifecta of our projects. This is roadmap to resources. And so I think Nicole kind of ended with this, the management plan, and just for people who are new to this, if this is your first meeting, the way that we structured each of these groups, we created this management plan. So you have NECAFS management, which is like Chris Callahan and the other co-PIs, so Luke and Amanda and Betsy Ben and Chris Walsh, yeah, great, good memory, and Elizabeth Newbold. And they're sort of overseeing all the funding and assessing our project and making sure that we're making progress and doing our outputs. And then we have this NECAFS staff. So what we decided to do is that we had resources dedicated towards these working groups, and the way that they allocated that funding was to hire on, so we have Dave and then Andrea, and they're servicing our end of this sort of working group and helping actually execute these projects and goals. So they are, they're paid and they're supported by NECAFS so that people like me who have a full-time job, or Amanda or Sam or anyone else who's in the audience, that they can provide guidance. And that's where we come in to help steer project activities, to kind of like check over, look and see how things are going and try to keep momentum going forward. But when it actually comes to like the daily in and out of like doing this or doing the survey analysis, then that's gonna come from these paid people. So that's how that structure works. And I don't know if anyone else has anything to add to that, but so that's kind of like the structure that we've been going with. And so with that, our resource subgroup, these are all the people that have been involved in this. So we obviously have Andrea and Dave who've been really instrumental in our group. And then we've had several people involved in this. So Jason Bolton, who's not here, Amanda Chin, she's a student at UMass. We have Kathy Davies, who's back here. And then myself, Chelsea Matson, who is not here, but she's with the National Farmers Union. Billy Mitchell, who was also working with her, he is stepping down because he has other commitments now, but he has contributed to our group. Dr. P, as people know her, Rohan from the University of Maryland, and then Chris, who's also here in the room right now from UMass. So we're all kind of, it's a very loose knit. We just provide guidance. We encourage anyone who wants to join our group to join. I just want to make sure that I acknowledge them, the people that have been participating in this. And if you want to participate, you just contact me and I will put you up on our little email contact list. And we decided that we will be doing quarterly meetings. So it's not a huge commitment for anyone who's on the subgroup, where we touch base and follow up on projects. So I'll send you maybe more than quarterly emails, but that's kind of when we all are going to be gathering together to have our communication. So if you'd like to join in with us, please email me. And that's EMT, like emergency medical technician 32 at Cornell.edu. Okay, so I'll now go into our project. So, just keep that in the back of your mind. If you hear something you're interested in, you want to be participate with our group, then you're welcome to join us. And for us, we're developing this roadmap. And the idea is it's to direct the small processors who are impacted in some way by the FDA's PCHF rule and connect them to relevant resources. And these are people that may or may not have to comply with the rule, or they may be qualified, or they may have to meet some of the modified requirements, but it's all the big target here are the small processors, so small, very small. And what we're doing is building a very distinct catalog of resources under very specified categories that are meeting their specific needs. And then the idea is to electronically publish this and then distribute sort of that link. So it'll live on a website and that link will be distributed and they can go there and then feed out to all of these other resources that are out in the public domain.
Just a question.
Yes.
Under the predefined categories, is that like keywords?
We're gonna go into those
Okay.
categories, so you'll see what those are.
All right.
Yeah, so this is our approach. We created an outline. These are kind of the sort of steps. So the outline is going to explain our purpose, provide guidelines for the use. We have these categories defined. We wanted to kind of give a description of those, so that's what we're going to really target for when we're looking up these resources. Then one of the biggest sort of tasks for this is to identify and pool resources for each category that we've defined, and then review and finalize the list. That will be a big thing for our guidance for the subgroup to go through and see that. Then we have someone will design sort of a content layout to make it really user friendly, and then we'll do an evaluation of it and conduct some pilot testing, probably survey and get feedback, find out like if it's really useful or not useful, or if it's intuitive. You go to this website and it's like, okay, you know, my 70-year-old mother can navigate through it and like find what she's looking for, or if it's too complex, or if we get too far into the weeds. And then we'll do some rework based on that feedback, and then a final review, and then we'll publish it, let it go live. And then feed in probably to the awareness group in some way, maybe. I'll circle back. So this is sort of what we've accomplished so far. We decided that explaining the purpose and guidelines for use is really gonna come down more like when we do the design content layout. But what we did accomplish is defining these categories, and these categories were determined in our previous meeting. But what we've done that's new is come up with these definitions. So on the table of the plethora of handouts that you have this one, front and back. So it has our list of the category and then the definition. So if you look at that front page, you have that. And then the other page that we have is that kind of heavier packet. And what we're looking for, if you guys have any feedback on the definitions that we provided for each of these categories, there should be a stapled packet. So you get to keep the single page to take home with you if you want it. But then this will be the form that you can fill out, the other packet that's stapled, where you can provide information back on the definitions. And the importance for this and the significance of this is that these definitions are kind of going to guide the sort of resources that we're pulling for each of those categories, because they're pretty broad categories. So when we get to the point where we're really identifying some of these resources, this is going to be sort of helping us guide what we're doing. So I don't know, how are we doing on time? We're good. We're good?
Yeah.
So maybe I'll give you like 2 or 3 minutes, and you can, if you have any feedback, you can read through the definitions. You can also, I'm gonna be here today. I'm gonna be doing a poster downstairs at the poster session. I'm gonna be here tomorrow. So if you don't give immediate feedback, we'd like that immediately, then you can also give it to me later in this meeting. And we were talking about maybe putting this online as a survey, but what we're afraid of is that we may not get your feedback if we send you an email with a survey. So if you have any comments, maybe each table could pick a definition, you know, I don't know, however you guys want to do it.
So are you aligning, Elizabeth talked about doing peer review as part of the other regional, one of our FDA regions is doing a peer review process. Is any of that going to be integrated with the resources that are being currently corralled? Or is that like an app?
I think that's a separate thing that I'm not aware of.
Okay.
I don't understand.
Yeah.
You don't
Are you-
understand.
Corralling existing resources, or are you gonna develop your own resources?
Well, the resource that we're developing is going to be a website that has a list and a guideline of targeted resources that are useful for the small processors. So we are not
The foraging, the ones that.
We're
exist.
foraging ones that are already existing, but we're trying to tailor them down, and the target audience are the small and very small processors. So it's not it's not necessarily an extension resource, but it's for the stakeholders themselves.
Gotcha.
And it's kind of, so it goes, it's more defined than the clearinghouse, because the clearinghouse is like a dump of everything, right? And you can go through and search that, but I think that's intended more for extension educators. So this is supposed to be like for the guys who go to their facility or you're working with them, and they, these were the targeted categories that we decided that they would really be looking for resources on. We did a survey to get to those.
And so then would this roster be housed in the clearinghouse, so we have access to then pull it for our stakeholder?
So it's gonna have its own URL. It'll be on its own website, and it's that,
Not
so
in the
you can
clearinghouse.
just send your the small or very small processor directly to that website.
Okay.
So it's its own sort of thing. So it's gonna live off of the NECAFS website. So we
But
talked about that,
I see what you're saying.
but it's gonna be distinct. It'll be distinct from the clearinghouse. And
So how
so
is it distinct from the clearinghouse?
because it's a succinct document, so it's not
So you're
encompassing
saying that this
everything.
clearinghouse is not succinct and it's cluttered and it's full of extraneous.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm
It
saying
is.
that it's a different, it's, the thing with the clearinghouse is that anyone can upload, there's no review process. So we are targeting specific resources, and we'll get to how we're gonna kind of vet some of those.
I'm just wondering if you could just totally change the clearinghouse to.
No.
Now, that's
No.
not a long enough process. We don't
We don't
have
wanna
the
get
time
there.
invested in that.
But-
They're
But-
different, useful, they both have their
Yeah.
use.
No, it has no use.
No, the clearinghouse has use.
Okay.
I think everything has a use. You just have to,
Well, I like your idea better, making it more
well,
succinct.
thank you, I appreciate it. But it's not just my idea, it's like, this is what we all
So the
kind of came up
categories are
with.
driving those
So-
top needs.
Yeah.
Is the goal to only have this electronic? Because I'm wondering about some of the small people may just not have access, they're not into.
So, yeah,
The communicators can find.
Good point.
it will be it is gonna be an electronic resource. Just because we're gonna link out to other resources that are existing. So it'll link out to FDA resources, it's gonna link out to state-specific resources, it'll link out to, extension, so.
So I don't know where to put this comment, but, and I just mentioned this to Glenn, in the previous rule, we talked about mixed type facilities.
Yes.
So if I'm a farmer and I'm like, oh, I'm doing that, I'm a mixed type facility, and I go over here and I do not see that address.
Uh-huh.
Right, so, and then you think, well, it doesn't, this part of the rules doesn't apply to me. It's some sort of strange variable.
Yeah.
So I mean, maybe we should also incorporate that.
That language in there, so, yeah, so, go ahead and you can put it anywhere on this, because I'll collect this and I'll read that, so you can put a star, you can put it at the bottom. I don't know if I put room at the back of this.
I'll put it under compliance.
Okay.
Tomorrow.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I think at the on page 7, I put some additional feedback, so you could throw stuff on there. Okay.
We're talking.
Oh, no, it's okay. I don't know, how much time do we wanna?
You are doing
dedicate?
just good. You want people to fill it a little bit longer? You got
Yeah,
maybe
people
a couple
are
more
working
minutes?
on it.
Couple
And
more
then
minutes, yeah.
another-
Can I can turn this into
Turn
tomorrow?
your homework in tomorrow, that's fine.
Thank you, thank you.
And are you planning on going through the rest of the slides as well?
Yeah, okay, so that's why I just
A
want
couple minutes? Give them a couple more minutes.
Okay,
Yeah, that's fine.
just keeping time management.
See, you just blew out water pressure what I wanted to discuss. This is exactly it. Well, I do have a question. I don't know how you know your chief piece in your whole on everything like I have to
It's one is Wi-Fi, which is
Okay. Oh, I know, I just took it on. Yeah, I need to unlock it. Yeah.
So, what about?
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna open that up.
I was just gonna.
The reason I asked, one of the things,
We got some people on this.
All right, everybody, if you guys can just finish up, and if you need to still think about it, we're going to be probably following up with emails to the group as well that might have opportunity to fill in some more answers if you haven't finished here. Whatever you finished up, you can also give it back to Beth later on during the conference. Okay?
And your feedback is valuable and it'll be used, and it also helps to facilitate the whole collaboration that we're looking at in being inclusive with everyone that's here. So the second step in our sort of outline of after we identified these categories through a survey and through other previous work, we came up with the definitions, and then we were like, okay, we should identify and start pooling resources for each category. But what we found, I don't know how this came about, but Amanda Kinshaw was like, oh, hey, we have this project where we're looking for video resources online. She's like, how are you like gonna think about the resources that you're putting up on this? Like, are you gonna vet them in any sort of way? And so using that, she was like, well, we have this rubric that we developed for video resources. And she's like, you wanna take a look at it and see if maybe you can adapt it to sort of to your project and to what you're, and how you're gonna pull out and how you're gonna rate these resources, so that when you provide these resources to these small and very small business owners, that you're giving them accurate information or what, and it's of a high quality, so those sorts of things. So we came up with a rubric, and what you'll see on the back of that single page that you have is a copy of the rubric that we adapted. And that's the other part of sort of the homework that we had, is then to get your feedback on that rubric. And so the rubric essentially has 3 parts. There's an assessment using a Likert scale. So it looks at quality, content, and then reliability and credibility. And then based off of that, we'll be able to score the resource. So the lowest score possible would be a 7. That would be a very poor, we would call it poor resource. Whereas something that would receive a score of 35 would be an exceptional resource. And then we also wanted to ask a couple of other sort of closed questions, just like yes, no, or I don't know, maybe, I'm not sure. So one would be accessibility, because this is gonna live online, and to meet just web accessibility standards for people that are going there. And then usability, and then whether or not it's your opinion that, or the person who's reviewing the content, if it's their opinion that they would recommend to incorporate that feedback based off the score, and just looking at the material, right?
What do you mean accessibility?
Web accessibility, so they're web accessibility standards. So
I don't know what they are.
that, so there's a not sure, so you could just,
Oh, I don't wanna do that. I wanna.
well, if you
Give
don't
some
know,
examples?
Does that mean free as opposed to paying for something?
what?
The accessibility.
No, web accessibility really means just if it meets, there are specific guidelines for online resources, whether or not you meet web accessibility. I know way too much about those standards. There's different rating systems, and it's just because I'm involved in the communications with the website that we host. And so our university is forcing that, well, not for, our university has to meet certain standards. And I'm assuming there are several universities who are moving over towards that model where they also have to meet web accessibility standards. And so we're gonna be housing this on NECAFS, which is associated with the University of Vermont. I am not knowledgeable about what University of Vermont standards are, but if they are a university that's gonna switch over to where we have to have accessibility, if we post any PDF files, then they have to meet web accessibility standards.
So do you have, yeah, I guess
So-
at this point, it would probably be helpful for us or any of those to understand what those terms are.
Some examples.
Yeah, so I can define that out.
Print
And I-
size, I don't know. Is it
Yeah. So I did put a checkbox for like not sure. So, but that is good
Yeah.
feedback. You can write it on your form.
I
You
don't
need to
understand.
know what I mean by web accessibility or
You
accessibility.
get
An
it, not
example
sure.
is the PDFs, right? So that some of them cannot be translated to diction, so someone can't hear them, and so you need to have. Like,
See, if
a
you
Word
want me to
document.
put not sure, that
Yeah.
doesn't help you at
Yeah,
all.
it's like that.
That means go
Well,
out and do another survey because nobody's sure what that means.
there are going to be people that know what that means, and there are going to be people that don't know that. And what the point is I want, if someone's looking at a resource and they're not familiar with those guidelines, they're not going to be able to tell by looking at that on their own independently whether or not that file meets accessibility standards. So if they're not sure about that, then they can check that box, and then someone like me who's educated on how you go into a PDF file and actually check to see whether or not it meets those
Just
accessibility
Throw us a few
requirements.
bones, just give a few
Yeah,
examples.
but I think I mean,
what-
these are vague terms, but on the rubric, I think it spells it out a little bit more. Maybe not.
I mean, if you're not
Doesn't
sure.
meet web accessibility
If
standards.
you put a word in a survey that most people aren't sure what it means, then it.
Well, this isn't a survey, this is a rubric that,
Okay.
like Andrea's gonna use when she goes to
Okay,
find
a rubric.
resources. So this is
Yeah.
not a survey question that's going out open-ended to people, but I do want feedback on the rubric itself to see if there's something that we missed in asking a question. If there's something where like, like, oh, well, if you're asking this about content, you probably also wanna ask this question. Or like, does this really matter or not? So that's more,
So you have some examples.
yeah.
Or you're gonna get people mad when you say credible resource, government, university extension.
Well, so you can fill out the form. There are boxes you can write down of if you think that we should be using something else or using a different standard, or then please share your opinion. So
These are hard. Those rubrics are hard.
rubrics are difficult, but I think what we're trying to get is like so that we have a standardized mechanism for when we're vetting resources, and that we're not just like, oh well, we should just put like all these Cornell resources because they are, top notch and number one, like woohoo, and not being inclusive of other groups and other resources that are out there, and then also just identifying like if there's something that might be questionable, we don't want to be relaying that wrong misinformation to our stakeholders. So these are some of the resources that we've identified to date. We compiled some last year with our meeting here. Nicole Richard was wonderful, and she has a bunch of resources that she delivers to people who attend her PCQI training. She shared those with us. So we have those. My program at Cornell that I'm involved with, we have a page up on our website. And so we were wondering, who else has some resources that we can tap into as we're going through this process and looking for them. So for our poll, we were gonna do another poll. I don't know if you wanna pull that up, Dave. Can you name a program website that has some of these PCHF resources? And then we'll take that list, Dave will record it for us, and
You guys can think about that. If you want to finish up, we'll do it right at the end of.
right at the end? Okay, so think about it, keep it in your mind, and then we'll run the poll. And then our timetable, we're a little bit delayed from where we thought we would be at this point. What we're gonna be ramping up to do now is identify and pool resources. And then hopefully by the summer, we'll have a list of these resources that we can, that we'll have in hand and be able to start reviewing within our subgroup, and start to finalize the content at the end of the summer. And then when we get into the fall, we'll do a layout and then start doing our evaluation and conduct some of our pilot testing. And then our target date is to have our rework, our proof, and get to publication in the end of January 2021. So that's the timeline we're hoping to stick by in getting this product out. And then, yeah, that's it. So,
Questions?
Or
Before
if
we
you
jump
wanna
into a
join.
poll?